2013's 47 Ronin was an absolute disaster. From a first-time director being handed the reins to a $200 million budget blockbuster, to costly reshoots, to troubles in post-production, this was a movie that was plagued with issues at every turn. And in the end, the trouble wasn't even worth the time, as it went on to both flop commercially and critically. So join me today as we re-examine this mess of a film. We'll explore the many troubles behind the scenes, analyze why it failed, and I'll offer up some of my personal thoughts on the movie. The idea of 2013's 47 Ronin was first conceived by Morgan and Walter Hamada, who came up with the idea of a fantasy-inspired rendition of the 47 Ronin, a story that has been adapted many times about a real-life group of masterless samurai in 18th century Japan who avenged the death of their master by battling his rival. This idea was brought to Universal Studios, who saw this project as their own potential Lord of the Rings. By late 2008, Keanu Reeves was attached to star, and the first draft of the script was being written by Chris Morgan, who is no stranger to these big blockbusters as he also penned 7 different Fast and Furious movies. In 2009, a director was found with alleged criminal mastermind Carl Rinsch. And boy, let me tell you the story about this guy. Up to this point in his career, Carl Rinsch had only really directed TV commercials. However, in 2010, he made a short film called The Gift, which got some decent buzz at film festivals. This acclaim led to him being the planned director for an Aliens prequel and a Logan's Run remake, but neither of these projects panned out. He would make his feature film debut with 47 Ronin. Although, the most interesting part about Rinsch's story came years after 47 Ronin came out. Now, I'll try to keep this brief since it doesn't have much to do with 47 Ronin, but I thought it was still worthy of note and would give you some context on Rinsch. Back in 2018, Netflix threw over $55 million at Carl Rinsch to create a big-budget sci-fi series. However, the production was an absolute nightmare, as Rinsch allegedly had a big substance abuse problem, treated the production crew terribly, and used some of the Netflix money to invest in Dogecoin, which he then used to buy luxury items such as 5 Rolls-Royce, a Ferrari, a $400,000 watch, and millions worth of furniture and clothing. In March of 2025, he was arrested and charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and 5 counts of using illicit funds in a transaction. The court case is currently ongoing, but I'd say expect a Netflix true crime documentary about this at some point. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg with this story. I'll put some links in the description if you want to learn more because this is just wild. But from everything I gathered online, this guy sounds kind of crazy, and like he is extremely difficult to work with. I mean, there's a whole Reddit thread of horror stories by people who worked with him, many of which were on the production of 47 Ronin. But keep in mind, this is Reddit, so who knows if any of these stories are true. Anyways, the first bit of tension between Rinsch and Universal arose when they had disagreements over the tone of the film. Here's a quote from Variety. One point of conflict was that Rinsch kept wanting to make the film more Japanese, almost like an art house samurai movie. The studio, understandably, was nervous. The picture needed to play to mainstream audiences across the world in order to break even. It already had a cast made up entirely of Japanese actors, like Hiroyuki Sanada, Ko Shibazaki, and Tadanobu Asano. Additionally, Keanu Reeves was worried that his character wouldn't feel integrated into the main arc of the story, so screenwriter Hossein Amini was brought in for rewrites to help broaden his character and simplify some of the dialogue. The budget really started to swell when Universal made the decision to film 47 Ronin in 3D. It was being propped up as a huge blockbuster by the studio, and it was given a huge blockbuster budget to match, at around $170 million. Principal photography kicked off in March of 2011, shooting all over the world in Hungary, the United Kingdom, and Japan. Reportedly, various scenes were first filmed in the Japanese language to familiarize the cast, and then were filmed again in English. Reshoots took place in London in late 2012, as Universal executives had concerns about the story after seeing an early cut of the film. These reshoots mostly focused on, of course, making Reeves' character more important to the finale, and this caused the budget to balloon even further. Some sources say it landed somewhere around $225 million. However, other sources say it was still in the $175 million range. But either way, this movie just cost way too much. But this would not be the end of this film's woes, as post-production brought its own host of problems. Universal was unhappy with the direction Rinsch was taking the film, and seized control away from him. There are rumors that he was kicked out of the editing room, and Rinsch got the DGA involved to ensure that his contractual rights were being honored. However, it's worth noting that there are sources that deny this actually happened. A revolving door of editors came and went to try and salvage this project, but it seemed to no avail. Universal dug themselves into a hole, and they were desperately trying to dig their way out by just throwing more money at this project. At first, 47 Ronin was set to hit theaters in November of 2012, but the reshoots obviously changed these plans. It was then scheduled for a February 2013 release, but once again needed to be rescheduled due to problems in the editing room. It finally saw the light of day in December of 2013, where the response was about as bad as you would expect. It had its worldwide debut in Japan on December 6th, where it only scraped together $1.3 million on its opening weekend. This debut was very troubling considering the well-known local cast and the fact that the film is loosely based on a famous Japanese tale. In fact, this opening was so troubling that it was reported that Universal had already taken an unspecified write-down on the project before it even debuted in the US. Speaking of which, in its opening weekend, it made a little less than $10 million, debuting at number 9 in the box office, right behind The Hobbit: Desolation of Smaug, Frozen, Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues, American Hustle, The Wolf of Wall Street, Saving Mr. Banks, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. It managed to make $38 million in the US and $113 million overseas for a total worldwide gross of $151 million. It's estimated that 47 Ronin lost around $96 million when factoring in marketing, distribution, and the theater's cuts. Oddly, even though it was a commercial disaster, 47 Ronin still got a sequel. In 2022, Blade of the 47 Ronin debuted on Netflix, which takes place 300 years after the events of 2013's 47 Ronin. But this sequel got around the same reviews as the original. So now that we know the absolute mess behind the making of the film, let's explore the many reasons why it flopped so hard. As stated before, this film was such a massive flop because it was stuck in development hell for too long, with a budget that kept growing and a release date that kept getting pushed back. But there's plenty more reasons why it failed that I also want to talk about. 47 Ronin had a poor release date, as there was tough competition at the box office. It debuted on the same weekend as The Wolf of Wall Street and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Additionally, big franchises like The Hobbit: Desolation of Smaug and The Hunger Games: Catching Fire were in the middle of solid runs. Throw in other highly successful films like Frozen, Saving Mr. Banks, and Anchorman 2, and it's no wonder that 47 Ronin was completely buried by the competition. We have to consider that at the time, Keanu Reeves was in a career slump. 47 Ronin hit theaters a decade after the third Matrix movie came out, and it was released just before John Wick took the world by storm in 2014. In 2013, Keanu Reeves' name didn't carry the same weight at the box office. Honestly, if John Wick didn't become a smash hit, this film really would have tanked Reeves' career. 47 Ronin also had a pretty terrible marketing strategy, as the trailer failed to communicate the tone of the movie and was confusing and vague. It was attempting to blend samurai history with supernatural elements, which resulted in a niche target demographic. The filmmakers also took lots of liberties when it came to changes from the source material, which may have turned away potential fans. It's the classic blunder of trying to appeal to the widest audience possible and ending up appealing to no one in the process. As a side note, it's weird how much this tattoo guy got featured on the marketing, since he barely has any lines and is only in the film for like 30 seconds. It just shows how little faith Universal had in this project, that they were just throwing random things at the wall to see if they stuck. I'm guessing they just thought he looked cool, so they threw him on the poster. It's also rumored that Universal didn't pour very much money into the marketing campaign since they had very little confidence in it. There was no hype building up to its release, and many people didn't even know of its existence at all. Universal knew they had a dud, and this is further supported by the fact that reviews were embargoed until 36 hours before it hit theaters. And this, of course, leads into the reviews, which were not kind at all. It currently holds a 16% critic and a 48% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, and a 28% on Metacritic. Being a bad movie was the final nail in the coffin, which solidified this as a box office flop. But what about it is so bad? Well, let me share some of my thoughts on why this film sucks. I'll be honest, this section is going to be short since I don't have very much to say about 47 Ronin. This is simply because the film is so boring and forgettable. Hold on, let me tell you what I liked about it before I dig into the negatives. The action in this movie is fun, and the production design is impressive. I mean, the costume department went all out on this film, and I respect the hard work that was put in. The best way to watch this movie is just to look up the action scenes on YouTube, as everything in between is borderline unwatchable. The filmmakers behind 47 Ronin forgot the first step when it came to storytelling, and that is to make the characters interesting. If the audience doesn't care about these characters, why should we care about this story at all? We have no connection to what is happening on screen, and it results in a painfully boring watch. The story and characters give off the impression that the writers were going through the motions, too afraid to explore anything further than the surface level. The dialogue is droll and there's no rhythm in the editing. There's far too many shots of people staring off longingly and some very stop-and-go pacing. I have a lot to say about Keanu Reeves' character because I think many of these issues can be traced back to him. Just as you may have gathered from the behind-the-scenes drama, his place in the story is extremely unnecessary and shoehorned in, which is crazy since he has a majority of the screen time, has top billing, and is thrown front and center on all the posters. Yet, he does nothing. He gets the Ronins the swords, and he saves the damsel in distress from the evil shapeshifter. That's it. That is the extent of what he has to offer. The point of a main character is that a story wouldn't exist without them. Yet, if you were to pluck Keanu Reeves' character out of this film, not much would change to the plot. So much time is spent on his romance side plot and backstory, and just like everything else in this movie, it's so cliche and one-dimensional. It makes the whole film feel dull and drawn out, and it takes time away from focusing on the other characters that actually have a purpose in the story, like Hiroyuki Sanada's character. His character could have been a really great protagonist, but because we don't spend enough time with him, and the screenwriters only wanted to scratch the surface of what makes him tick, he comes off as superficial and uninspired, which really sucks because Sanada is just a fantastic actor. To make matters worse, the performance by Keanu Reeves is so basic. Granted, this is mostly due to the poor writing, as Reeves can be great when given proper material to work with, but his performance in this film is still poor and not enough to make this a fun watch. I don't know what to say, this movie is just unremarkable. And it's not even one of those movies where it's so bad it's good, it's just straight up boring. Let's wrap this up. When it comes to 2013's 47 Ronin, this was a project that was doomed from the start. Hundreds of millions of dollars were given to a crazy director who had never made a feature film before. Reshoots and rewrites plagued the project at every turn, and Universal kept tweaking the film until it became a boring mess. By the time it hit theaters, everyone knew what a mess it was, and it was quietly swept under the rug after losing almost $100 million. So that's the long and complicated story behind the massive failure of 2013's 47 Ronin. But what are your thoughts on the film? Have you seen it? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. And here's a sneak peek of next week's video.
I am taking them to imprison them in prison.
He is taking us to...
Quiet!